When you think of Capcom, Street Fighter and Resident Evil are probably the first series that come to mind. Since the 90s, Capcom has mostly been the house that those two franchises kept running. However, for those who grew up during the days of the NES, a certain Blue Bomber could be just as associated with Capcom as Resident Evil and Street Fighter are. Today, we're looking back to the mid-80s when an arcade giant made the decision to release a game that would be exclusive for the most popular home console of its day. Of course, the game we're talking about is Mega Man. Thanks for joining us today as we Mega Man slide our way through the history of this iconic game. Before Capcom released Mega Man in 1987, they had some great success with their arcade games. In 1983, Capcom would release a game called Little League into arcades, but this was not a traditional arcade game. It was more of a game where you won tokens. What is credited as the first actual Capcom video game to hit arcades is 1984's Valgus, which was a shooter, easily the most popular genre of the day. However, also in that same year, Capcom would release one of their first big hits, 1942, which would become a popular franchise for the next several years. The following year, in 1985, Capcom was firing on all cylinders, releasing the epic titles Commando, Gunsmoke, and most importantly of all, Ghosts and Goblins, another popular franchise in the Capcom crown. In 1987, Capcom would release great game after great game into the arcades. Black Tiger, 1943 The Battle of Midway, Bionic Commando, and also in 1987, Capcom would release a little game called Street Fighter, complete with its super strange original arcade cabinet, which had large buttons that players had to actually punch. It is very interesting in that in 1987, Capcom created two of their most iconic characters in Ryu from Street Fighter and, of course, Mega Man. While Capcom was very successful with many of their arcade games, Capcom was not a stranger to the home console and computer market either. Many of their arcade games would be ported so that players could enjoy them at home. However, by 1987, home consoles, especially the Nintendo Famicom and the Western version, the Nintendo Entertainment System, were becoming very, very popular, and Capcom wanted to make a game that would be released exclusively for the home. With the NES being, by quite a margin, the most popular of the home consoles, it was decided that making a game for that system gave Capcom the best chance of success. In typical Capcom fashion, this was not just a quick and easy job to make a quick buck. They went into this new project with the intention to not just make a game that sells well, but make a game that people will love. A game that is worthy of the Capcom name and the good reputation that they have built. With so many classic arcade games, we would love to know what your favorite Capcom arcade game is from the early days of the company. Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. Most people who love to know about the making of video games associate one name with the Mega Man series, and that name is the legendary designer Keiji Inafune. However, for the first Mega Man game, he was not the initial driving force behind the title. It was actually Akira Kitamura, who would serve as the director of the game, and Nobuyuki Matsushima as the lead programmer. At this time, Keiji Inafune was rather new to Capcom, and he was brought onto the project as an artist. However, due to the relatively small team, Inafune would get to have a real hand in the creation of many of the characters in the game. Many of the characters were already being worked on before Inafune joined the project, but he gets the full credit for Elecman, who, Inafune says, is his favorite character. In addition to the designing and fine-tuning of the characters in the original Mega Man, again, due to the small team size that Capcom allocated for this project, he also was responsible for turning his art into pixels. Something that is very interesting is that the reason Mega Man is colored the way that he is was that the color blue had more shades than any other color that the NES could produce. This allowed them to have Mega Man be much more detailed than what many other NES characters looked like during this era. Of course, this decision would also be the reason that Mega Man still has the nickname the Blue Bomber to this day. For their first NES game, Capcom went above and beyond to create an interesting narrative for Mega Man. In the futuristic year of 200X, in the city of Monsteropolis, robots are common and there to help humans. This is the world of a very talented scientist called Dr. Light. However, another scientist called Dr. Wily has corrupted the robots and plans to take over the city with his 6 robot masters: Cutman, Gutsman, Fireman, Electman, Bombman, and Iceman. Thankfully, all is not lost as Dr. Wily has a robot helper who is willing to be turned into a heroic fighting robot to try and stop the evil scheme of Dr. Wily. It's a fun story, and for the time, it truly did capture people's attention. The Mega Man lore would be greatly expanded over the next decade, becoming something pretty complex. Anyone who is a big fan of Mega Man may find it strange that we have not yet paid attention to the fact that the game in Japan is not called Mega Man, but it is actually called Rockman, with Mega Man being called Rock and there being clear musical influences in the game, such as his sister being called Roll, for example. What was the reason for the change of the name? Well, Capcom Senior Vice President Joseph Morici is the reason for the change. To keep things simple, he flat out hated the name Rockman, and he came up with the idea of calling the hero Mega Man instead. There have been conflicting reports over the years that there was some kind of licensing issue with another game being called Mega Man in the West. However, Joseph Morici has publicly stated on more than one occasion that the reason for the name change was that he did not like it. This proved to be right. Capcom did actually do some research into this, and it was found that the game would be more likely to succeed if it were called Mega Man than Rockman. It could take a while to translate a game from Japanese to English for a Western release, and it was not uncommon for a game to be released in Japan and then come to the West a year or sometimes even longer. That would not be the case for Mega Man. Releasing in mid-December of 1987 for the Famicom in Japan, Mega Man would be released on the NES by the end of December that same year. There are conflicting reports regarding the exact date that Mega Man was released on the NES in the West, but it was for sure released before the New Year's Eve bells were ringing. Of course, the biggest thing when taking Rockman from Japan and turning him into Mega Man in the West that needs addressing is the box art. The bad box art Mega Man is the stuff of legend, but there's a reason Mega Man looks the way that he does. With the NES version in the West needing to be made so quickly, the artist had around 12 hours to get it done and then handed it in to Capcom. This resulted in a very strange-looking box art with a character that looks nothing like Mega Man at all. While the Mega Man series would go on to do very well on the NES outside of Japan, the initial release was not a huge hit at first, and Capcom of Japan laid the blame for this one on the horrendous box art that Capcom of America approved. When you look at the Japanese box art and the American box art side by side, the difference is staggering. You have to wonder why Capcom of America did not just take the Japanese box art and tweak it slightly for the Western audience. Even more bizarre than this is that Mega Man 2 for the NES, while not as bad, still features a character on the box that does not look exactly like Mega Man. Over the years, Capcom has seen the humor in this, and bad box art Mega Man would become a playable character in the Street Fighter X Tekken game released for the PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, PC, and Xbox 360 in 2012. You could make the argument that when gamers think of the popular term NES hard, Mega Man is one of the first games that comes to mind. And make no mistake about it, the original Mega Man is a very challenging game. It may be challenging, but it is also a very fun action platformer that has a rather unique element to its game design. Mega Man can run, jump, and thanks to his handy Mega Buster, he can also shoot enemies. There are 6 stages at the start of the game, and in an unusual for the time style, players were free to pick what order they wanted to take on the 6 stages. Each stage had its own Robot Master as a final boss and a level that was themed around that Robot Master's gimmick. The twist here was that the gameplay of beating the bosses was heavily inspired by the classic game Rock, Paper, Scissors. Each time Mega Man defeated one of the Robot Masters, he would gain access to their power, and he could use this as a new form of attack. The idea is that certain Robot Masters are weak to a specific form of attack, with other attacks doing very little damage. This adds a bit of strategy to the game as players need to think about what stage to tackle when, so that they have the right power-up. Most Mega Man fans agree that Bomb Man is the right way to start the game. His power-up then makes taking down Guts Man much easier. This is a prime example of having to play the stages in the right order to have the best chance of beating them. Once you have Guts Man's super arm, you can then head to Elect Man where you can get his super beam. Back in 1988, without the internet, it was a real trial and error system that either made the game way more fun for you, Or on the flip side of this, it made the game more frustrating. This was something that reviews of the day pointed out. There were many gaming publications that loved Mega Man, but there were also others that felt it was harshly difficult, and they did not quite get what Capcom was going for as far as the gameplay goes. Once the 6 Robot Masters have been defeated, the final level will appear. Dr. Wily is now waiting for you and has a very challenging gauntlet that you need to run through in order to beat the game. Truth be told, the original Mega Man is a pretty short game, but the unique way the game lets you pick the levels makes for something fun. Although once you know the best order to face the bosses, the game does become much easier. Let us know how you found out the right order to defeat the Robot Masters, and if you have your own specific way for taking them on. Believe it or not, Mega Man was not a massive hit right at the start, especially in the West. However, Capcom knew that they had something here, and they allowed the team to get to work on Mega Man 2, which is regarded by many as the best game in the series. Mega Man would become a very popular series for Capcom, and they would release 6 games in totals for the NES, with Mega Man 6 releasing rather late in the console's life in 1993. These are some of the most popular games on the NES, and for many collectors, getting these games in the box is a real grail. It would be hard to argue that, after the Mario series, Mega Man is the premier and most notable series of games that the NES has to offer. Capcom did not ignore the Game Boy. Capcom was actually fantastic at porting many of their popular NES games to the Game Boy, DuckTales being a prime example of when this was executed near perfectly. The Mega Man series would be more of its own thing on Nintendo's handheld, and 5 Mega Man Game Boy titles would be released alongside the NES ones from 1991 until 1994. The home computer market would also get a few Mega Man games, but the less said about these games the better, as they are very poor in comparison to the NES and Game Boy Mega Man games. Mega Man and the NES really do go hand in hand, while the Super Nintendo would get Mega Man 7 in 1995, rather late in that console's life, as well as a couple of spin-off titles. When it comes to Mega Man on the Super Nintendo, many people think of the Mega Man X series as that console's Mega Man. While we have focused on the original Mega Man here today, we would love to know what you feel is the best Mega Man game on the NES. Mega Man 1 is not one and done. After its initial release in 1987, the original Mega Man has been released several times over the years. The earliest example of this is on the NES itself. When Capcom realized that they had a hit on their hands with Mega Man 2 and even 3, the original Mega Man was reprinted again. No word on how many new copies of this older game were made, but Capcom wanted those who came into the series with the second and third game to be able to buy them, and of course, Capcom wanted to make sure they got the money for this and not a used video game store. In 1994, Mega Man would make the jump to Sega. Capcom had once been a massive presence on the NES, but during the 16-bit era they were very prolific for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis as well. Mega Man: The Wily Wars featured remakes of the first 3 Mega Man games. Think of it as a similar package to what Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo was. These offered new graphics, better sound, gameplay changes, and more. In Japan and Europe, Sega fans would be able to actually purchase a physical copy of Mega Man: The Wily Wars. In the USA, no physical release was ever made. Instead, it was used as something to tempt Sega Genesis owners to purchase their own Sega Channel service, where players could download the title. This has led to Mega Man: The Wily Wars becoming a real grail for Sega collectors who want an official copy for their collection. However, there have been many repros made of this game, which is a much cheaper way for a Sega collector to add a physical copy of this game to their collection. The Mega Man Anniversary Collection was released for the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube in 2004. This offered the first 8 Mega Man games as well as the 2 Capcom arcade beat-em-ups. For Mega Man fans, it was a fun package that was packed with extras. Although the Nintendo GameCube version of the game mixed up the jump and shoot buttons and did not offer any way to change them, this was something that many hardcore Mega Man fans hated. To go along with this celebration of the Blue Bomber, special Mega Man-themed controllers for each system were also released. The following year, in 2005, Capcom would release a version of the Mega Man Anniversary Collection for the original Xbox. After already being remade thanks to the Mega Man: The Wily Wars collection for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis, Capcom would once again remake the original Mega Man, this time called Mega Man Powered Up, and it was released for the Sony PlayStation Portable. This was a pretty big remake as it offered a whole new art style that made the characters look like chibi toys. What is interesting about this is that the story goes that this is the way Inafune had imagined Mega Man would look when he was working on the character back on the NES, but due to limitations of the console, he was not able to do so. Between 2007 and 2013, the original Mega Man would be made available via Nintendo's Virtual Console service for the Nintendo Wii, Nintendo 3DS, and the Nintendo Wii U. In addition to this, Mega Man would also be released a few different times for mobile phones to varying degrees of success. Many fans love the Nintendo Virtual Console, which has now been replaced by the Nintendo Switch Online service, which does not contain any of the NES Mega Man games, but there is a good reason for that. Capcom would release another Mega Man collection, the Mega Man Legacy Collection, in 2015, which contained the first Mega Man title as well as the remaining 5 for the NES. The Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 would be released after this, containing Mega Man 7 to 10. The Nintendo Switch would get a port of both of these collections, which could be purchased as one big Mega Man collection, giving you access to the entire 10-game saga. It is due to the Mega Man Legacy Collection that none of the NES Mega Man titles, including the first, have been released as part of the Nintendo Switch Online service. While Mega Man has been a passion project for Capcom, there is no way that they could have known that the better part of 40 years later, fans would still be excited for more Mega Man games. While Mega Man may not have the same mainstream appeal as the likes of Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, or Pikachu, those original games on the NES were so popular that Mega Man was one of the main characters of the popular Captain N, the Game Master animated series, which ran alongside the Super Mario animated series and the Legend of Zelda animated series in the late 80s and early 90s. This version of Mega Man was rather interesting in that he was green and he talked like he had smoked 50 packs of cigarettes. People always talk about bad box art Mega Man, but very few bring up how this was also a rather strange incarnation of the character as well. There would be plenty of Mega Man merchandise, although most of this would be sold only in Japan. Still, Mega Man was popular enough that he got his own animated series in the West, which was supported with some very cool action figures, many of which have become real collectibles these days. Capcom has had a rather strange relationship with Mega Man and the hardcore fans over the years. Many fans are still mad that the Nintendo 3DS title Mega Man Legends 3 never got released after several promises from Capcom, and the fact that Mega Man Legends 2 ended on a cliffhanger. However, on the flip side of this, Capcom did right by the fans by releasing Mega Man 9 and 10, two fantastic games that went back to the original NES Mega Man for their inspiration. Mega Man has also been part of other Capcom franchises. He was a playable character in the first two Marvel vs. Capcom games. There have been Mega Man-related items and clothing in several other Capcom titles such as Onimusha and Monster Hunter, and Mega Man was even chosen as one of the non-Nintendo characters for the Super Smash Bros. Series. He even got his own awesome amiibo, which could be used to unlock a Mega Man-themed costume for your Mii in Mario Kart 8. There have been so many Mega Man games made over the years, and to think that it all started with Capcom wanting to make a game that was exclusive to the home market. In addition to the main series, the Mega Man X series, Battle Network series, fighting games, and other spin-offs have all been popular, making Mega Man one of the most consistent series since the days of the NES. With Mega Man 11, Capcom would change pace and no longer do the game in the NES style as they did with Mega Man 9 and 10. Instead, this new version featured a more 16 or even 32-bit look and was seen as a way for someone new to the series, perhaps a younger gamer just falling in love with gaming thanks to their Nintendo Switch, to give the classic Mega Man style a try. One of the most fun and exciting Mega Man releases happened in 2025. The company Blaze had become very popular thanks to their Evercade range. This featured a handheld system as well as a standard console. The idea behind the Evercade was to release physical games on a cartridge, complete with a box and manual, for video game collectors who still loved physical video games. There have been many cartridges offering a great selection of home console, computer, and even arcade games. In 2025, Blaze would add a new entry to their Evercade series, the Evercade Alpha. This is a bar-top-style home arcade system, and they paired up with Capcom to release two versions of their Evercade Alpha, one being a Street Fighter II themed cabinet, and the other, Mega Man. This allowed Mega Man fans to have their own Mega Man, the Power Battle mini arcade at home, and it featured both Mega Man arcade beat-em-ups as well as 4 other Capcom classics: Final Fight, Carrier Air Wing, Strider, and Knights of the Round. In addition to this, those already in the Evercade ecosystem could plug in their cartridges and play their entire library, all on an arcade system with an awesome Mega Man theme to it. While the Mega Man series has remained popular, the story of the legendary designer and the man responsible for what Mega Man would become on the NES, Keiji Inafune, would leave Capcom in 2010. Inafune would start his own studio and went to Kickstarter to fund a spiritual successor to Mega Man, Mighty No. 9. The development of Mighty No. 9 was heavily publicized and rather troubled. The game had numerous delays, and sadly, when it was released, many fans felt that it was a disappointment. There was also talk of many issues with those who backed the Kickstarter getting the physical collectibles that they were promised. While it would be unfair to say that Mighty No. 9 is a truly horrible game, it paled in comparison to the Mega Man games that Capcom was releasing after Inafune left the company. Speaking of Capcom, they have a very exciting new Mega Man game scheduled for release in Mega Man Dual Override, which is scheduled for release in 2027 on pretty much anything that can play a video game. While not a numbered title, this is regarded as the next mainline Mega Man game, so the future of the series is looking very bright indeed. We want to say thank you very much for taking the time to look back at the original Mega Man and the legacy that it left behind. If you have any special memories of Mega Man, please let us know about them in the comments section, as we would love to read about your time with the Blue Bomber.